captain of your own ship, and your happiness is dependent on you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna be happy all the time.
Right, I'm happy all the time.
It don't have nothing to do with nothing outside of me.
Right.
What up, dope? It's Dwan and Ken, CEO of Black News Detroit, and we are back with another episode of Speak for Yourself. Of course, we have Ken Elkins.
What's happening?
And an extremely special guest with us today, Baba Malik Yakini. You're going to go ahead and introduce yourself. What we do is invite folks to introduce themselves because I've heard you introduced in several places. When people introduce me, sometimes they say something like, I wouldn't introduce myself that way. How do you introduce yourself? How do you see yourself?
How do I see myself? I see myself, well, you know what? I could do this. I wrote a rap once about how I see myself. So I'm not going to do the whole thing.
What? I can't wait for this. I want to hear the whole thing, yeah.
A little bit. I do
give us a hot 16.
Yeah.
I am spirit man, a mystic warrior. Check it out, people. These words are just for you. I'm a falsehood shaker, reality maker. Mess with me or mine, and you'll see an undertaker. I'm a freedom fighter, a spirit flame lighter, gonna elevate our consciousness higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. I don't eat dead flesh because I know that this is best. Life begets life, and death begets death. Don't drink no coffee, don't eat chicken gizzards. Evolving and unfolding to a melanated wizard. Don't sniff cocaine, and I don't use crack by the U.S. government. We're under attack. Got to mobilize and organize so we can fight back. So we can fight back. So we can fight back. So that's a little bit of who I am.
All right. I see you.
Yeah, you're going to have Kyrie Turner trying to
come back. Try to come back. Try to be like, hold on. He ain't going to show me up. Yeah. I don't eat dead flesh either.
I mean, I'm good. We got like Baba Malik dropping bars.
Right.
Himself. Like,
That's a mic drop.
I'm good. My day is made. That's what's up. Well, thanks for coming and hanging out with us. I mean, I imagine your schedule has to be crazy, busy. I think you're working on a couple things.
Yeah, so we got a few things going on.
Always got a few things going on.
Got a few things, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about the thing that makes me most excited, the grocery store, and as a kind of builder, somebody who has some experience in the construction trades, I ride by there probably once a week just to see what's happening. I ride all the way down Euclid to the corner and turn around because I want to see it from the other side as well. So what's happening there? Where you at in the process?
Well, let me start by saying that in addition to all that I just said in the little bars, you know, yes, I'm a spiritual person in a human experience, working on behalf of black people in particular and humanity in general. And my job, what I get a paycheck for every 2 weeks, is I lead an organization called the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. And so that's a nonprofit organization that works for black food sovereignty for black folks in the city of Detroit. And so we do several things, one of which is we're building the Detroit Food Commons along with our development partner, let me be clear, Develop Detroit Incorporated, headed by Sister Sonia Mays. And so we're building a new 31,000 square foot, two-story building on the corner of Woodward and Euclid that will house the Detroit People's Food Co-op, a community-owned grocery store, as well as on the second floor, 4 shared-use kitchens and a 3,000 square foot community meeting space. And we're moving the offices of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network into the second floor of the building. So we've been working on this actually for 13 years actually this year.
13 years.
We started in 2010.
What did it look like in 2010, right?
We had an idea that, that we needed a grocery store the community members owned, that was cooperatively owned. We were very concerned then, as we are now, about the lack of black-owned grocery stores in the city of Detroit, which we often say is the blackest city in North America. Right. And what I mean by that, because sometimes my brothers in Brooklyn like to push back when I say that. So Brooklyn has more black people than Detroit.
Yeah, and we love y'all.
Yeah, we love Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Ain't no hatred on
not
Brooklyn.
at all.
But I'm just saying we the blackest.
That's it.
And what I mean by that is that we have the largest percentage of the total population that's a black population
Right.
of a major city. There might be some small towns in the South that are more than 80% black, but of major cities in the U.S., we are the blackest. So in the blackest city in North America, black people in this city are buying our food from people that don't look like us and who, for the most part, are not reinvesting that money in our community.
Right.
And so it's an extractive economy. So we were and are concerned about that, not just for Detroit, but we're concerned about that in black communities throughout the United States. And frankly, it's pretty much the same scenario in black communities throughout the world. Other ethnic groups are coming in and, they see us as a market for cheap goods and also as a way of extracting profits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, there's one thing that we don't have a decision on. We have to eat something.
Yeah, right.
So, like, we know that, like, that's a must. And the thought of not controlling, like, your own food, as you talk about, like, your diet and your introductory rap about yourself, right? It's like, that's huge. And I think about my dad and other generations talking about my grandmother or my great-grandmother and the way that they would garden, the way that a lot of their food came from the backyard or either land that they owned, even in Detroit. You talk about, like, generations in Detroit, right? And the importance of that. The thought of having to depend on somebody else to make sure that you had the food. And I worked, my first job was in a grocery store. And if I said the name of it, it's Superland. Mm-hmm. It's Superland. And it was a family-owned grocery store. And, they was my people. I learned a lot in that job when I was 13, 14 years old. But I would not go and buy my groceries from Superland, right? So the thought of, like, it being controlled by us, people that are intentional about that, really excites me and really gets me excited for my kids that'll be here and have kids in Detroit.
Let me add another layer of nuance to this conversation. So I was specifically talking about black people, but the reality is in American society in general, very few people control their food.
Yeah.
So, we live in a society where we see corporate consolidation a lot in the grocery business. So, when I was growing up in Detroit, there were 5, 6, 7, 8 national chain grocers. They were all over the city. Yeah. What we see nationally is those grocery stores, the larger ones, eating up the smaller ones. And we see this in American capitalism in general, but it's really impacting the food industry in particular. Yeah. We see the same thing on the production level. About 5 companies control almost all the chicken production in the United States. Very few companies control beef and pork production. And so American people in general have become more dependent upon this corporate control food system. But like everything else in American society, things that affect the general population adversely affect us doubly adversely.
Yeah.
So what is a co-op grocery store? Like, how does it work? What is it? A lot of people don't know. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I've actually heard of it when I heard of your grocery store. That's when it first came to my thought. I was like, oh, that's what that means. But for our viewers, what is it? How does it work?
Okay. So there's several types of co-ops. So I'll tune right into the type of co-op we're doing. We're doing what's called a consumer co-op. So a consumer co-op is a business that is owned by people who patronize the business. Okay. And so in this case, we currently have about 1,800 what we call member owners, people who have paid $200 each to buy a share of the ownership of this cooperative business.
That's $200 a year?
$200 one-time fee.
$200 one-time fee. Okay, all right.
Yep. And so the difference, though, in a co-op and a corporation, let's say in a corporation, let's say Dwan is a big fish, right? Mm-hmm. So he got lots of money. He can buy 500 shares of stock. And maybe I'm only a little fish. Maybe I can only buy 50 shares of stock. In a corporation, he gets 10 times the votes that I get. In a co-op, it's a flat horizontal structure.
Okay.
Where you can only have one share and you only get one vote. And so everybody's operating on the same level. So it's a way of establishing a democratic way of operating, a democratic way of ownership. And then also one of the benefits of a co-op is in any year the store is profitable, those profits can be shared by the member owners. They're actually owners of the business. Okay. It's not like Sam's Club where you buy a membership and the membership just allows you to go spend your money at Sam's Club. In this case, you actually are an owner of the business.
Oh, wow.
Now, in the pre-opening stages that we're in now, as we're leading up to the December opening, there's 1,000 different decisions that have to be made about products in the store, colors, finishes. The member owners are the ones making those decisions.
Oh, wow.
It's their store. They're not just buying permission to shop at the store. They're actually helping to shape it.
Okay, so they're making decisions on. So when you decide on what products you're going to get, that all goes out for a vote all the time? No.
Clearly, that would be impractical.
Right.
So in the next month or two, we're hiring a general manager. We have the job posting out for it now. We have about 40 applicants who have applied as general manager. Once the general manager comes on board, that person will make most of those specific decisions.
Okay.
But in the interim, that person is not on board yet, so we're having to make all kinds of decisions, and we have committees that are people by the member owners of the co-op. So the main committee making those decisions is called the Store Operations Committee.
Okay.
So still a tremendous number of decisions are being made directly by member owners, not through a mass vote, but through their participation on these working committees.
Got you. And so is there like you mentioned, Sam's Club, is there also a discount that's offered to co-op members, or what are there other benefits that's offered to them?
There are other benefits, but a discount at the register is not one of them.
Okay.
Now, many co-ops used to do that. For example, there was a co-op in Detroit on Cass and Willis called the Cass Corridor Food Co-op that I was a member of. It closed maybe 20 years ago or so. And at that co-op, if you were a member owner, you got a discount at the register. And I forgot what it was. It might have been 10% or something like that. But as the wisdom within the co-op community has evolved, the generally accepted best practice now is that it makes sense to wait until you close the books at the end of the year and see if you're profitable, to then divide those profits rather than essentially giving profit away at the register. And so there will not be discounts at the register on a regular basis. There won't be. There will be periodic discounts. We'll have specials, 4 or 5 items a month that members will get a discount on. But for 99% of the products, you'll pay the same price whether you're a member owner of the store or whether you're just a general community member. That's the other thing that we decided on. As we were researching how to structure this co-op, we looked at many co-ops, both in the state of Michigan and throughout the country. And so some co-ops have this kind of exclusivity. For example, in Brooklyn, we talked about Brooklyn earlier, but in Brooklyn there's a food co-op called the Park Slope Co-op, which is probably the largest food co-op in the country, and they have more than 17,000 members.
Oh, wow.
And so they have a policy where you can only shop at the store if you're a member of the co-op. In fact, you can only walk in the store if you're with a member, and even if you're with a member, you still can't buy anything.
Okay.
So we looked at that model, and we decided that probably wouldn't work well for Detroit. And so, we looked at the best practices, tried to look at the realities of the situation we're faced with in Detroit, and tried to shape something that we thought would fit this reality that we're faced with.
Nice.
So if somebody wanted to join now, right? So you got 1,800 members now.
Yes.
Is the books cut?
No, there's no ceiling on the number
Okay.
of members that we get. We'll continue to accept member owners indefinitely.
So what would someone need to do if they wanted to become a member?
They should go to our website. They can join online. Although, let me say this, that we, at this moment, as of this taping today, we're having a little problem with the website. We hired a new company to administer, and they're having a couple difficulties with the e-commerce part of the site. So today, the part of the site where you can join and pay is down.
Okay.
We're hoping to have that fixed in the next few days or so.
So by the time this airs, probably next Tuesday.
Yes.
We should be back live.
Yes. So people should go, and the website is still live. You can't join now.
Gotcha.
So, but the web address is www.detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.com. detroitpeoplesfoodcoop.com. And you can join right online. You can get all the information you need about how the co-op functions, about the meetings, about the standing committees, about the board of directors, all those kind of things, and then you can actually join online as well.
Nice. Did you have another question, Ken?
Yeah, you mentioned there will be kitchens on the second floor as well. So what's what's the purpose of the kitchens? Talk about that.
Well, we have a lot of entrepreneurs in our community who are part of what some people call the shadow economy. People who are doing things that are not necessarily sanctioned by the government, but they're doing these things to make money.
Yeah.
And so you got a lot of people doing cooking in their homes, maybe doing cakes and pies or barbecue dinners, chicken dinners, or, all kind of stuff people are doing. And they might not be licensed to do it. And some of those folks want to come from the shadow economy into the above ground economy. And so this provides an opportunity for people to have a licensed kitchen that they can produce their products in and put them in retail establishments. But also there are entrepreneurs who are currently operating in the overground economy who want to be able to scale up, and the kitchen space they have available doesn't afford that scaling up. So this provides additional kitchen space with all, fully equipped kitchen. One of the 4 kitchens will have baking equipment in it. One of the 4 kitchens will have dehydration equipment. So we have a variety of kind of food preparation things that people can do in these kitchens.
Nice. Love it. I love it.
I know that some of the business. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we're trying to, stimulate new food entrepreneurs as well as support existing food entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think some of the business owners that I'm aware of, they're at that spot where they're ready to grow, but they can't sell to some of the other stores, right? Or some other like customers are, even an opportunity. I mean, an option for them because they're still cooking at home, even though they've made some adjustments to at home and have done some things to kind of like beef up their production. But until they're operating out of a commercial kitchen, they won't be able to sell to certain spaces. So that's good.
Yeah. The other thing is people that are doing catering, who need kitchens to do the catering in, or sometimes even restaurants. In addition to running the restaurant, they might still do catering, but they don't have a kitchen large enough to service the restaurant and do a catering job at the same time.
Got you.
There's also farmers, and as you know, I'm involved in farming. The organization I lead also runs D-Town Farm. Many times farmers need kitchen space that they can do some basic processing of produce in. For example, if you buy collard greens, if you just go to the store and buy collard greens, they're going to cost one price. But if somebody washes them, chops them up, and puts them in a plastic bag, the price goes up tremendously. And so even that basic processing adds what we call value. These are value-added products. And so we want to help grow the urban agriculture movement in Detroit as well by providing opportunity for farmers to produce more value-added products.
Nice.
So I want to touch up on the urban agriculture because you mentioned earlier that most Americans don't control our own food, right? Correct. And we learned that especially in COVID, right? When we were all having riots in grocery stores trying to get, food. And toilet paper, especially toilet paper. But food that we could have just been growing on our own. Right, some of the food we could have grown on our own, and what you have in D-Town Farms. Talk to us about how important that is, because as you mentioned, a lot of our parents used to have gardens back in the day. Now I don't know any of my friends have a garden. Like I don't think
we have one.
Y'all got one?
Yeah, we have a garden. Okay. Kim has a garden.
I'm like, all right,
Kim's at a garden.
You ain't never talk about growing nothing in no garden. Look, no, all of a sudden you next some leaky talk about I got a garden.
Interesting fact though. Kim's first garden, and I told you about this. You remember where her first garden came from?
When we had the Shamba Organic Garden Collective?
Yes, y'all pulled up in a van.
Yeah.
Jumped out
that was my
about
van.
6-7 deep.
That green van.
With a tiller.
Yes.
Dropped the tiller down. Kim was pregnant at the time, so she wasn't able to necessarily. I would have needed all kind of instructions and help, right? But y'all came out. She showed y'all the area in the backyard that she wanted her garden in. And
they went around and started gardens?
Bro, like in about an hour, they were back in the van, headed to the next spot. They came about
y'all still do that?
We don't still do that.
All kind of stuff.
That was the precursor to the organization we started, Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. So I used to run an African Center School and sort of an institute. And what he's referring to was part of what we call the Shamba Organic Garden Collective. Shamba is a Kiswahili word that means farm. And so we had kind of 2 teams that were part of this Shamba collective. One was called the Groundbreakers, which is what I headed on Saturday mornings, and that's what he's referring to.
Okay.
So we would roll up with the tools and a crew, bit, bap, bap, bam, do the most labor-intensive part in hopes that people would then plant the garden. Yes. In most cases, they did. In some cases, people still didn't plant it.
Okay.
But we had another team called the Recorders who would take pictures and kind of record the process. Because we kind of had the sense that, we were making history even back then.
Yeah, I love that idea. That is.
It was live, man. It was live. Before you could ask them if they wanted some water, they was back in the van, like headed to the next spot. And we've had
so she still got that garden?
We've had a garden ever since.
Wow, that's dope. I love that idea.
We moved. We're not in that house anymore, but I ended up building her some raised bed gardens. So she's got 2 raised bed gardens that, she's continues to grow in every year.
And so why is that so important? With that mission, why is that so important to grow your own food?
It's important on several levels. And I'll start. So I mentioned the school. I just want to kind of go back to that because in many ways this work that we're doing now grew out of this African-centered school. So there's some obvious reasons it's important, healthy food and the economy, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But the less obvious reason is that it's our view that we are largely disconnected from kind of the flow of life. We spend most of our time in buildings and on concrete. The earth itself, in the Western view, the earth is like the third stone from the sun. It's a inanimate object. If you study Western science, they say there's living objects and non-living objects. But as you study African philosophy or various so-called Eastern philosophies, they begin to advance this idea that everything is alive and that the earth itself is alive. And in fact, there's a lot of scientific evidence now that supports this, that there's energy that's emanated from the earth that we need to connect with to be whole. In fact, there's research that shows, for example, that a child who's been diagnosed with ADHD, that a 15-minute walk in nature has the same impact as taking Ritalin. So there's something about our connection to the earth that we need to be fully human. And so the kind of deeper underlying objective was to create an experience where children could have an interaction with nature. And by gardening, you become aware of several things. You become aware, number one, of the relationship between plants and the weather. You become aware of the relationship between plants, the weather, and insects. You become aware of the angles of the sun at various times of the year and the length of days. And you become aware of the relationship of human beings to all of these things. And so our kind of more subtle objective that we didn't talk about as much was really to teach this lesson of interconnectedness, that we are not here to dominate the earth as some Western religious traditions might, or I'll put it like this, as the interpretation of these Western religions that has been given to us would suggest, some texts use the word dominion, that man, I guess meaning humans, was given dominion over the earth, or that we're here to dominate it. I've heard some other translations of the original Hebrew, and dominion is not how that was interpreted. It was more like stewardship. And so we want our young people and adults to have this sense of connection with nature, that we are not here to dominate nature. In fact, trying to dominate nature is the surefire way to our destruction. And the only way that we are going to prosper as a species, as well as the other animals and plants that we share the planet with, is if we act as stewards and we see ourselves as part of the matrix of life, not being separate from that.
Calling all cyclists, we're talking about the two-wheel pedal pushers that love a good long ride. It's the Ride for Equity Kickoff from Detroit to Ferndale and back. It's the first leg of a 7-day ride from Detroit to Mackinac. It all starts on May 21st at 8 a.m. Get your bike ready for the big Ride for Equity Kickoff, starting at Marygrove College and rolling into Ferndale on May 21st starting at 8 a.m. To register, go to bldrideforequity.org. This ride is to raise funds for Black entrepreneurs and bring awareness to the importance of equitable funding practices. It's 7 days of biking from Detroit to Mackinac, and it all starts at the Big Ride for Equity Kickoff from Detroit to Ferndale, May 21st at 8 a.m. on the campus of Marygrove College. Go to bldrideforequity.org to register. Are you ready to ride?
We want our young people and adults to have this sense of connection with nature, that we are not here to dominate nature. In fact, trying to dominate nature is the surefire way to our destruction. And the only way that we are going to prosper as a species, as well as the other animals and plants that we share the planet with, is if we act as stewards and we see ourselves as part of the matrix of life, not being separate from that. So that was the deeper lesson that we were trying to teach through experiential learning. The other things that were more obvious is, clearly in a society that continues to be dominated by the system of white supremacy, that all systems are dominated by that, including the food system. And so Black people tend to get the short end of the stick. As we look in our communities, we tend to have lower quality food. If you compare the food in grocery stores in Black communities to the food in the mostly white suburbs surrounding Detroit, there's a stark difference. If you have dietary restrictions, like perhaps you're diabetic and you're looking for, kind of those specialty foods that address your medical condition, it's much harder to find in stores in the city of Detroit. If you are into organic food, for example, it's much more difficult to find organic food at neighborhood supermarkets than it is in the suburbs surrounding Detroit. And so in many ways, black people get the short end of the stick in the capitalist system, and that's true in the food system as well. And then, so there's the kind of nutritional and health aspect of it, that, the more access we have to nutrient-dense, fresh, healthy, organic food, the more optimal health we can achieve. But then there's the economic aspect too. And so right now, there are millions of dollars in leakage every week from Detroiters either spending money in their own community with people who own the stores who don't live in that community and who take the money out of town at the end of the day, or even worse, about 70% of Detroiters have automobiles, and many of those who have automobiles, including myself, often go on the other side of 8 Mile or go outside of the city itself. And so once again, our money is leaving our community instead of finding ways to circulate that money within our community to create the kind of healthy, prosperous, resilient communities that we like to see.
Nice.
No, that's good.
That's dropping knowledge right there.
Yeah, for sure.
In three different distinct areas.
Yeah. He didn't touch about the he touched on the weather, the earth, and the plants, insects, but he didn't talk about the raccoons and the groundhogs and the squirrels that he be constantly battling with in his own garden at the house. This is true. But you talked about the school that you started, and you were the founder of, and I think that's when I first met you through your work there.
Can I interrupt you just a minute and just say that I was not the sole founder? And
Gotcha.
In fact, I have not.
I think that's important.
It is.
That's important to say. Yes,
I'm one of the co-founders,
because sometimes people want to know about like Black Leads Detroit, and I'm like, if they think I founded Black Leads Detroit with my limited abilities, then Ken is like one of the co-founders, and like it was slim pickings, you know what I'm saying? So out there, so we just had to take what we could get, you know what I mean?
Just roll with them.
But no, man, like definitely being able to connect with folks that believe in it as much as I did, and was willing to show up, put in the work, and bring their gifts and talents,
right.
And commitment.
Yeah, it's
so
a collective
thanks
thing.
for that correction.
Yeah, because I hear that a lot. People say, your school or your co-op, none of this stuff is mine.
Right.
I'm thankful that I've been allowed to play a leadership role and and add some vision and insight to it.
Yeah.
But none of this stuff I could have done individually. And in fact, I think there's some harm in constantly pushing this individual narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the way we progress is by working collectively. It's not where you have some great charismatic leader that all of a sudden just comes up with some idea and makes stuff happen. And that's the kind of idea that we have about how progress. I know. And that's not how progress happens.
No, not at all. Yeah. Not at all. And we deify and then we demonize. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like we deify somebody and make them like set them apart from everybody.
And then when they make a mistake.
Then they demonize. Exactly.
It's funny when you mention that, and I had corrected someone on this a while ago, and it's just kind of off topic, but they would always use the term my nonprofit. No, one day I was like, why do you keep saying my nonprofit?
Right.
Yeah. Isn't it just say the nonprofit's name,
right,
or our organization or something like that, right? Yeah. But it's really, as you just mentioned, elevating that. Hey, I started this, I did this, and it just took me back. Yeah. Like I kind of even looked at them. You're like, well, why did you start this? It seems kind of braggadocious. It's because Dwan has never. Since we've started this organization, the word "my" has never came out of his mouth. Yeah. It is actually, it refers to it as Black Leaders Detroit, right? And so that just shocked me and I've never heard you've always said your organization's name. And so it's interesting.
It's like, it's not even my idea. It's not an original idea. The way that I describe what we do at Black Leaders Detroit is, it's the thing I've heard us talk about at the dinner table and in the barbershop when we said, if we could just come together. It reminds me of the co-op, right? If we could just come together, we would be okay, right? And that's what we try to do at Black Leaders Detroit, is create a mechanism where we can come together and collectively bring a solution to a problem.
The other thing, what I've experienced is when people do that kind of lifting up this individual leader narrative, what it does is it invisibilizes all the other people who can
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
and that
for sure.
causes internal dissension.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because people be like, why this dude always, out in the front? I'm
Right.
at the farm working, and that's not the kind of energy that we
Right.
want to create. We want to create an energy that recognizes the contributions of everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we trip on the person for, like, being feeling some kind of way, and it's like they put in a lot of work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So of course
put
they're
in
gonna feel
a
the kind of
lot
way.
So definitely, yeah. No. So can you talk a little bit about the school
Sure.
that you were, a part of,
Sure.
founding and leading?
I'll say that I was working at another African-centered school in Detroit, and I had some principal differences with the leader of the school.
Okay.
And my vocalization of my principal differences resulted in me being put out of the school.
Okay.
I was teaching at the school in exchange for my two oldest children's tuition at the time.
Gotcha.
So I was perfectly content to kind of be the right-hand man to this amazing woman who was leading this school.
Mm-hmm.
But as fate would have it, I was kind of, the mother bird pushed me out the nest
Yes.
and said it's time to fly.
Yeah.
So in a sense, the school in Sodom Institute started around my getting put out of this other school.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly I was a key figure, but there were 7 families that came together and felt like me being put out of the school was not just, and all of their children had been in the school also, and they pulled their children out. I started homeschooling my children, and then some of these other families said, well, will you take my children and homeschool them also? And long story short, that evolved into what eventually became in Sodom Institute.
Nice.
And so I served as director of that school for, I think, 21 years or
Oh,
so.
wow.
And we had the chance to impact thousands of children in Detroit and
I
their
think
parents.
we still see the residual effects of that, right?
I see the residual effects all the time in some of the young people. In fact, just yesterday, a former student called me. She's at North Carolina A&T studying environmental science and agriculture. And she reached out to me because she is coming back to Detroit for the summer and she wants to get a job in that field. But, the fact that she is pursuing that path, or Brother Ali Darul Islam, who heads Ryder Cooperative Industries and is putting up solar panels around the city. He was a graduate of the school of Sister Sawatu Salama Ra, who many people heard of a few years ago. She was in prison for really defending her mother and ended up giving birth in prison, and some laws have been changed. But, she's an activist. She came out of the school. So, all the time I'm seeing the fruits of the labors in the young people who attended the school.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's
beautiful.
When we bump into, some students that Kim recognized, they're always doing something that like makes you smile, makes you proud.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your transition from the school that you were working at. A lot of times I see kind of the way that I would describe it, and the way that I reconcile some of those transitions in my mind, is that sometimes it's meant for us to be doing something else, and that something else probably wouldn't happen unless we move. And sometimes we stay somewhere so long that there has to be this falling out, if you will, or differences,
There's
if you
something
will,
to get you out
to
of it.
push us. You know what I mean? And it's like I can't even imagine there not being an Inseroma Institute at this point. The things that I, from afar, studied and learned, watching you during the time when you were managing the bookstore, director there, and launching what's now D-Town Farms, right? So I think about all the benefits of that, and it makes me feel a little bit better about not yours, but in general when I see some type of friction or something, type of disagreement that causes somebody to end up going and doing something else, because the passion is still there. And in a lot of ways, the passion of starting something shows that there's so many things that we agree upon outside of this thing that caused a difference, and said, okay, I need to go and do something and be somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to do what some people say, read your mail. So, the universe is always giving us signs and symbols. And sometimes when we're reluctant, sometimes the universe will give us a swift kick in the behind. And so this is what happened with the school I was at. I got a kick in the behind I had no intention on starting a school.
Yeah.
But it's like circumstances, pushed me into a situation.
Right.
So, and that's kind of how life goes sometimes. But I want to say this also, that, in fact, I'll name my elder mama, Imani Humphrey, was the director of that school, and say that within a year we patched up the differences.
Beautiful.
We still ended up starting in sort of an institute, and Aisha Shule, which was the other school, continued. But we had a relationship as like sister schools, I'll say. So we cooperated with each other.
Oh, wow.
We were able to get past that,
Yeah.
the differences that we have. We were able to patch it up, and she began calling me her son, and so it's a good story. Even though there was some friction in it, it really offered more options to Detroit parents in terms of African-centered education, and we were eventually able to patch things up and work cooperatively and had a great respect for each other until she became an ancestor. Yeah. And I would like to think she's still kind of looking over me and blessing some of the things I'm involved with.
Man, thanks for sharing the whole to that story. Right?
That still ain't the whole story.
Yeah, I know that's not.
I can tell you the whole story.
But that is nice that you guys are able to patch that up. And as
Yeah,
Dwan
for
says,
sure.
sometimes that happens to where, two ideas may not mix, and the elder person like, all right, you got all these ideas. Let me let you do them ideas.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Let me let you do them, and when you do them, I'm not gonna act funny about that either. We can do them together.
Yeah.
It's just that's just what needs to happen, right?
And
so there's nothing wrong with that.
I was I think 32 when we started in sort of an institute. So I was a relatively young fella, and a lot of times young fellas in their 20s and 30s, we think we know every damn thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
most of the time.
As you get older, you start realizing you don't know nothing really.
Yep.
But so I had certain ideas and I was critical. And then after I got booted out, now I'm running the school. Some of the same.
now you feeling her.
No, I had a greater understanding. Some of the things that I was critical of her about was because I really didn't understand the seat she was sitting in.
Yep.
Then when I was in that seat, I began to have a greater understanding and sensitivity for the factors that she was faced with. So I grew tremendously as a result of it. And, I want to acknowledge my part in the friction that we had. Part of it was my youthful arrogance as well.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens, right? But the fact that you were able to see, whoa, oh, I get it. This is why she was doing it like this because of what's happening right here, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Man, the thought of working with a 20-something-year-old Dwan, the 20-something-year-old Dwan.
I don't like working with the 40-something-year-old Dwan. So I could imagine working with the 20-something-year-old Dwan. We might not have black. It might be black leader.
Detroit. You cut his mic.
It wouldn't be ass. It'd be plural. None of them people who was on that founding board would have been
Oh
there.
my goodness.
Black leader
stuff,
Dwan.
The stuff
Black
that
leader
I,
Detroit.
right. The stuff that I
But especially with black men, I'm trying to grow. I'm 67 years old now, so I'm an elder no matter how you look at it. It took me a while to embrace that and accept it, because I think I freeze framed myself in my mind somewhere in my 30s or 40s. But I'm 67 years old, so hopefully at 67 I'm wiser than I was at 57, 47, 37, 27.
Yeah.
But as I look at my own life, part of what happens to black men in this society is because we are so suppressed in so many ways, and there's not a lot of opportunities for us to manifest the fullness of who we are. We're always in this struggle to prove something.
Yes.
And part of that has to do with kind of the macho facade that some of us put up. And again, this is me owning my own behavior, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm not talking about anybody. So to the extent it applies to anybody else, if the shoe fits, wear it. But I'm analyzing my own behavior. Part of it was you're just surviving in the community. As 13, 14-year-old, if you don't have a certain amount of bravado, you go get beat down. And so you got to put on a certain mask almost just to survive in your community.
Yeah.
And so the struggle for many of us is realizing what is the mask and what is the man, and how do you take that mask off and be your authentic self. And so this is all connected to this conversation about youthful arrogance and, as a young 32-year-old thinking I knew this and that and the other. And, in retrospect, saying I didn't know much of nothing. I still don't know much of nothing.
It's like picking up that humility, right?
Yeah,
and at that young age, not having that type of humility, and as I always say, smelling yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, I'm killing it. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm this, I'm that, and not having a full understanding of everything that's going on, a full understanding of why the Creator has you here in the first place, right? And what your duty is and what you're supposed to do, right? Sometimes we're confused on exactly. I know I've been a bunch of times confused on what I'm supposed to do. And as you just mentioned, as I get older and older, you're learning more, right?
Yeah.
Learning more what's important to you, and more especially what's important to your community and the people around you, and trying to do the best and operate within
But
that.
you know, for example, we talk about rites of passage a lot for young teenage boys or boys, 12, 13, kind of growing in early manhood. But this is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I don't have no process that tells me how do you move towards 70, right?
Yeah.
How should I behave differently now than I did at 50?
Right.
There's no guidebook for
Right.
that. So it's like a constant rites of passage.
Yeah.
And we don't have a manual that instructs us on how to do these things. So a lot of times we're stumbling into from one stage to the other, trying to figure out what does it mean to be a black man at 15? What does it mean to be a black man at 25?
Yeah.
And, we make lots of mistakes in the process.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when your culture has been decimated, because the culture gives you those kind of guideposts and prescribes what behavior should be at various stages of your life.
Yeah. And how do you handle the 32-year-old you that's going to come up and be you to you? You know what I mean? Like the 32-year-old saying, I know this, I know that. I mean,
How did you know how old my son is?
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? It is definitely your kids. It is definitely. It start with your kids when they have that attitude. They know everything. But even you being a wise and respected person, there's still gonna be someone to say, we should be doing it this way.
Yeah.
All respect, we should be doing it this way, because we encounter that with young folk that we deal with, and we've challenged ourselves. Okay, are we not, are we seeing it? Or is there something else we should be doing? Is there something, because like you're saying, there's no guidebook.
Right.
So is there something else we should be doing to handle this relationship with this young person or this young employee and things of that nature, right? So there's no guidebook to
I
figuring it
think
all
the
out.
other side of the equation, though, is that many times young people have insights that we don't have. And that's something I've learned.
Yeah.
That, yes, I have certain wisdom as a result of being on the earth longer and being introspective, but there's also certain things I can't possibly see because I'm blinded by the era I grew up in, where somebody 18 might have some insight I couldn't possibly have.
Yep.
And so I think the thing is to create these healthy containers where we can utilize the wisdom of elders, but we can still get the insight of young people.
Yeah.
And, we kind of balance all those things. In fact, I tend to surround myself by people younger than me because it helps kind of keep me current, and it helps me to have insights. And I found that many of my peers are stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I got peers who were like stuck in 1972.
Yeah.
And that's just where they are. And
Right.
they're not moving. But, I find by constantly having young people around me, I'm forced to engage with ideas that are more current.
Yep.
And so we need that healthy interaction
Sure.
between generations.
Sure. And I think that, like, for me, what I try to do with my children is to model, like, being open to their perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because, my youngest is 17, so they get into that ages. I got a 27-year-old, 18-year-old, 17-year-old. So I'm trying to figure out how to shift to, being a welcome advisor versus somebody that's like, yo, here's what we're doing here and there, right? But one of the ways that I try to model that is welcoming them to be advisors. So when I have decisions to make, because I know that I can't see it from their perspective and their vantage point, I bounce it off of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yo, like, here's what I'm considering doing. Like, what are your thoughts? And we'll process, and they'll give me feedback, and they give some really, really great like feedback, and now they're not always really trying to hear what I got to say, especially if it's like, and I you know what? Let me be honest. It's really when they want to do something or when they want to go in one direction. I'm like, no, like, you don't really want to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I know how that plays out.
Yeah.
Right. But truth be told, when I was their age, I was the same way.
Yeah.
Like they. Yeah, I would make them look like angels.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like some of the stuff that I tried and had my mind made up for. and whatnot. But it's beautiful because they do bring a lot and add a lot of value. And when you are able to be around some of them that love you.
Yeah.
And have your best interest, because that's what I'm constantly trying to remind them. Is like, yo, like you're not gonna find the better combination of wisdom, experience, and love for y'all than me and your mom, right? So like to not bounce things off of us or give us space to advise you doesn't necessarily make sense. But I know that to be true, like on the flip side of that coin. I'm not gonna find the same combination of folks that want to see me do well, okay, make the best decision. And love me. You know what
Can I add another layer to this conversation?
Definitely.
And since we're three black men sitting here talking, the same thing is true I found in my life with listening to women.
For sure.
And I'll say that I definitely grew up in a binary world, first of all, and guys that show any kind of, if people felt like, oh, you feminine or whatever, you was getting beat down. That's just how that was. Yeah. And so it kind of forced people to, if they was feeling some kind of, tendency, that might be described as more feminine, they try to disguise it.
Yep.
But also, I think I grew up in a world that suggested that, the man is the head of the family, whatever that means, and that, women are supposed to submit to men, and all these kind of ideas that in my mind are just totally antiquated ideas right now. But I'm just saying that as men, young black men growing into manhood, we are impacted by all of these kind of ideas that really limit our growth. Because in retrospect, when I think about the relationships I've been in and things women have told me, most of the time they were right. But I was too bullheaded because I was imbued with this sense of what I thought was masculinity, I wasn't open to really hear that. And so it's a challenge figuring out how do you be a strong black man and still be open and open to growth, open to your own growth, be introspective, value the opinions of people who are younger than you, value the insights that women bring, and be open to how all of that can help us to be better.
That was a hard lesson for me, right? Like that whole, like letting go of some of the stuff that I was taught. Yeah. And it's complicated, right?
It is complicated.
Because I was taught these ways by men that I seen love women well at times and in certain ways.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like I've seen them put their lives in danger to care for, protect, you know what I mean? And I've seen them work really hard to care for like the women in our family.
Yeah.
But there was definitely all kind of baggage that I'm still trying to unlearn. Yeah. You know what I mean? As it relates to some of that stuff you point out. Like I'll say it all the time. If I was Kim, I couldn't have stayed married to me. You know what I mean? It's like that. It just wouldn't have worked. But and seeing some of the calls that I just made, like, because I'm making it, this is what we gonna do. Yeah. And it's so funny because there are areas in experience, exposure, and just life that she's obviously like way more advanced than I am, right? So like to think that I have to make the decision on this as it pertains to our family when she's the expert in the household, right? It's backwards way of thinking.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It really is.
Right.
But like it was a struggle to let go of some of that and share some of that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it was definitely some friction there, but like between her and my daughters, they'll point it out quick. Like, like where's that coming from? Like did you just say that? And you got to own it. I said it because there's a part of me that believes it. You know what I mean? Hearing you call it the question makes me look in the mirror and say, yo, this is kind of messed up. Or not kind of messed, this is messed up, and I need to like grow. Yeah. But I've been extended all kind of grace. But they don't let stuff slide either.
Right, right.
They give me some grace to like grow, but they're not really gonna let you like slide or park anywhere.
I think it's important to see, like you said, our relationships as partnerships, right? And looking at that partner to see things that you don't see, right? So Dwan and I have a great partnership because we look at things in different, similar in some ways, and quite different in other ways. But we can talk to each other and have that conversation, say, oh, okay, I didn't see it that way, right? So even in your personal relationships, being able to say that, have that same perspective, like, I didn't think of it like that. I didn't see it that way. What I'm seeing is from my lens only. Like whenever we have a conversation, we always say, well, this is from my lens, right? But being clear with that as we're communicating, even in our relationships, this is from my lens. That's the information I'm giving to you. Now let me hear it from your lens, and how can we work together to come up with whatever decision or solution that we're going to make. And I don't think we do that enough. I wonder if it is. I struggle with something when I hit 40, big time. Still even struggle with it now, quite often. But it's to where for so long, like I grew up in a single family home, so I'm raised by my mother. I'm answering to my mother all my life. Then you get a girlfriend, you're answering to a girlfriend. You know, you're just answering to women.
Most of the teachers are women.
Most teachers are women, right? So your whole life you answering to women. So when I hit 40, I hit a crisis where I was like, I ain't answering no more women. I'm done with it. And it was a huge struggle.
He's married with several daughters.
Right.
I think it's important to point that out right here.
So it's like, look, I'm done answering to women, right? And so it was a huge struggle, like I say, a huge struggle that I go through now. But I wonder, is that some underlying struggle that we do have, is to where you are also outside, you've been answering to your mom all this time, and if you come from a single family home, you just trying to shed that too. Like, you know what? No, I'm a man
real.
now.
That's real. And again, I used the word layered earlier and nuance because these conversations, it's not all this or all that. There's all these different layers simultaneously. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. And I ran a school for 21 years, so I saw lots of boys from families where their mother was the main person in the family, maybe the only person, maybe the only adult in the family, and they were answering to their mother. Then they come to school, they have mainly female teachers, and the thing is, you want to develop a sense of manhood where guys are kind of they're operating out of their own. They're not just following the directions of other people. They kind of come into their own. But also, it's a question of balance. Right, so it's not a natural situation to have boys always answering to women or women always being the ones telling them what to do. Yeah. That's a result of the circumstance we live in now. And in traditional societies, we had rites of passage programs that I mentioned earlier that would help young men kind of move through these stages in a healthy, more healthy way. So again, it's just it's nuanced and so it's but what did they say? But and.
Oh, how's it go?
It's not
either it's not and or
both and.
Yeah, both and. Both and.
Yeah.
So it's all of this simultaneous. Yes, it's growing to a healthy sense of manhood and being able to stand on your own and make decisions, and it's having respect for women and the divine insight that they bring, and having respect for it's all of those things simultaneously. Yep. And if I can shift the conversation just slightly and just say that this conversation we're having now, really, which is really basically conversation about how we grow into our humanity, and we're discussing it as men, but a similar conversation could be had with women just about how, we grow into the fullness of our humanity and how we, are open to hearing the views of others and not dogmatic and thinking that we have all the answers, or developing, as you mentioned with you and Dwan, a complementary relationship. You don't have to see, in fact, it's a strength not to see the world the same way, because now your view to some extent complements his and vice versa. Yeah. And so, but those kind of qualities are the qualities we need within our communities to be able to build organizations and institutions that are long-lasting, are respectful, and are working for the benefit of our entire community.
Yeah, I love that when you talk about organization, right? Because a lot of times, quite often, you'll find, well, they don't see things the way I see, and it's just like if you see other leaders in the organization. So whatever, I don't support them. I don't believe, because they don't believe or think how I think.
Right.
Or they doing something differently than how I'm doing it versus, no, they doing it differently, but I wish them well, because what they're doing still benefits the community. Exactly. It's just not how I do it, right? Exactly. So like you're saying, to grow a thriving community, we have to be able to have that same type of thinking. So I like that point that you
Black
made.
People are not monolithic. We got all kind of different experiences. We have different class affiliations. We have different religions and spiritual views. We have different views on gender and sexuality. We have different views on what our aspiration. We have all these things in the Black community. But, you know, how do we create a pot where we can bring multiple views into it in a healthy way and build things that work for the collective?
Yeah, no, that's good. I want to touch on something, but I'm scared that we're gonna end up talking about it for another 20 minutes.
Right.
And we coming up on time. I do want to give you opportunity to share anything that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about, and hope that you'll come back. Because the question I was going to get into is that when I saw the ribbon cutting, there was people from a bunch of different like ethnic groups and backgrounds, and the balance of being like strong, proud, and Black, but being open to working with folks from different backgrounds without letting go or compromising any of that, is something that I don't know if some of our peers think is possible. And sometimes without it being said, I feel judged without anybody saying it. It might just be in my mind. But sometimes I feel judged and kind of called into question. And sometimes the temptation is for me to do something to prove that I'm extra proud, you know what I mean, and extra Black. You know what I'm saying? I'd love to like dive into that conversation with you when we have a little bit more time. But that's where my mind was.
I can touch on it right now.
Please touch on it.
And just say that one of the things that one of my teachers, Mama Imani Humphrey, who ran Aisha Shule, taught me is to always ask the question, is it best for Black people? And so this is my guiding principle in everything I do. I mean, I'm for humanity, you know, let's be clear.
Right.
I'm for the advancement of humanity, everybody having
Likewise.
human rights.
Yeah.
I was born into this group that we call African Americans, though. This is my tribe, this is my nation. Yeah. And so that's primarily what I'm concerned about, unapologetically.
Right.
Now, if I have to meet with some white people in order to advance the interests of Black people, then I'm going to do that. And I don't become any less Black because I'm meeting with some other people to advance the interest of our community. And in fact, I found out working on this grocery store that oftentimes, even though we're building a grocery store built on Black self-determination, sometimes I'm in meetings where I'm the only Black person in the room. Yep. And I'm like, wow, this is really ironic, you know, but
that's crazy.
But
ironic.
In some of these fields, you know, as you start getting into refrigeration equipment for stores, there's not many Black people in these fields. And so I find myself in many rooms where I'm the only Black person, but I am unapologetically standing up for our community.
Right.
And so I feel like we can, if we're strong in who we are, we can walk into any situation and we don't have to compromise who we are. You know, I don't. I show up the same wherever I am, whether it's in front of a foundation, whether it's in front of a meeting of the Black Society. You know, I'm going to show up the same way because this is who I am. And that's what it is, right?
That's it. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
It's interesting. I know we're running short on time, but when you said something you said earlier, because I don't think anyone doubt that either one of you are Blackity Black. Like, no matter how many white allies you have, I think what I find is done well is your ability to remain Blackity Black, but also build allies at the same time, right? So I saw Malik do it first. I was like, this dude, not knowing him, is so radical, you know what I mean? And he gonna let white people know what it is. Like, I think the first video I saw him, he was talking about money. It was like, we don't have white people on our money. It was when they had the Detroit, the D-Town dollars. Yeah. And I was like, but the video, it's all white people in the room. And I was like, wow. And I was sitting there looking like this brother just stood in front of a room full of all white people and told them the reason why we don't have a white man on our dollars because of this. And I was amazed by that, like amazed, because I haven't seen it. So it's the first time I've seen it when I seen him do it in some videos, but yet still able to build those allies because being consistent with his messaging, right? And not being offensive, but being consistent. And then watching you do the same thing and just admiring that, like, okay, he's real with it and people know what they're going to get. He's consistent with it, but not offensive with it, as Malik keeps saying, because I'm for humanity, but I'm Black.
Right.
And I'm going to be for Black people, right? Yeah. So I think that's one of a gift that the both of you have that you can teach a class on, is how to be consistently and authentically you, but yet still build allyship, right? I think that is a rare gift.
Yeah. I think, you know, a lot of times they like potential allies.
You lighter skin, so I thought that's why you got away with it.
Here you go. Here you go. See, we're going to have to do a whole nother lesson. but I think like one of the criticisms I have for us at times is that if we do have a real ally, sometimes we sending them to be an advocate with bad information if we're not being ourselves, right? If we're not saying the way we really feel, if we're not having the conversation we have when it's just us around, when they are around, then we sending them to be an ally with bad information, and they're advocating for something that we don't even want, and then we're frustrated. We like, y'all over here focusing on something that we've been hiring, yelling justice and equality. You know what I mean? And you working on something totally different. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And we're frustrated. So that's why I think it's important and we have to do that. But I appreciate you for modeling that.
Thank you.
And giving us something to kind of like point to and try to, you know, mimic.
You know, one of the things, if you've ever heard me speak, what I always do before I say anything else, I praise the Creator and I acknowledge our ancestors. And I always do that first because that gives me the platform to stand on with fearlessness. Yep. And a lot of times why we start, you know, doing funny dances and scratching places that don't itch is because we've been taught to be afraid of the power structure, which is overwhelmingly white in this society. And we've been taught from the time we were children that if you buck up against it, something bad is going to happen to you. And so the first thing is to lose that fear.
Right.
And to know that the Creator is with me and that's the space I move in it, and there's nothing that is more powerful than that. Yep. And so that's the first thing. But the other thing is I study, and so I don't just talk off the top of my head. When I say something, I'm saying things that I know I can back up. And so if somebody is foolish enough to challenge me, then I've got all the documentation. So I don't feel like I have to bend, to bow, to counter. I can be bold, fearless, say whatever I want to say. But I know that what I say is rooted in truth. It's rooted in my understanding of history, you know, which, you know, is not absolute truth. You know, our understanding of history changes in over time. But, you know, from the best available information now, I try to present that. And for the most part, people are not equipped to challenge that. So,
yeah, that's good. That's good. My one of the things that I do is remind myself not to want anything so much that I'm willing to compromise who I am.
Yeah.
Like, look, when I go into space, just don't want it that bad to where you're gonna compromise who you are. You know what I mean? Be okay with walking out of here the same way you walked in.
And you know, that's the attitude I have often when I meet with funders, for example.
Me too.
Yeah, we want to get the funds, but I'm not morphing who I am to get the funds. This is who we are, and if that's a good fit for you, cool. If it's not,
cool.
Right. We'll get it from somewhere else, right?
That's right.
It's the abundance mindset instead of that scarcity mindset. So,
man, it's been great.
It's been my pleasure.
Respect.
I know we didn't talk about what you thought we was going to talk
about.
Love
you, and just glad to be able to like share this space and have you speak for yourself.
When is the grocery store open? The
grocery store is scheduled to open in December of this year. Construction should be finished in October. It's going to take us about 2 months to get everybody trained, get all the equipment hooked up. So we're expecting to open in December. Also, I didn't talk about D-Town Farm, but Detroit Black Community Food Security Network runs the 7-acre D-Town Farm, which is opening April 1st for the year. And we have volunteers every Saturday and Sunday morning from 8 o'clock until noon. And for information on that, people can go to the DBCFSN website, which is www.dbcfsn.org.
What will they find when they come out? If they come out on a Saturday, so you can come and volunteer, you can come and shop at a certain point in the season,
Well, we start selling produce in June. We sell produce from June through October.
Right.
In the early part of the season, we're getting plants and seeds in the ground. And so what you experience depends on what time of the year you come.
Coming out.
If people come now, they go, now between now and May, they go see the hard labor.
I'm ready to work.
Where we're getting the soil ready and getting everything planted. And that's pretty intense. After that, after we get everything planted, then it's basically weeding, cultivating, watering, harvesting, and things like that. So depending on when you come, that's that will determine what you experience.
And what day? There's a festival, isn't there?
Yeah, we have a harvest festival every
Yeah.
fall, which is generally the third weekend in September. The last couple of years it's been delayed because of poor planning, but every fall we have a harvest festival where we have hundreds and hundreds of people that come out who might not come out and volunteer at the farm, but they'll come out and hear bands and speakers and workshops and vendors and things like that.
Nice. That's it.
That's it.
All right,
Pleasure.
y'all. All mine.
Thank you.
All ours. Yep. So y'all heard it from us. This is the next episode of Speak for Yourself. See you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Security was taking a long time, and there were several of us. Our flight was about to leave, so I finally got through security. Ran as soon as I got maybe 50 yards from the gate, they shut the door.
Ooh.
And so I already know once they shut the door, it's a wrap.
Right,
They don't
right.
care what they-
They don't care what you
no matter
gotta say.
This white dude came behind me. He ran up. He was on the same flight. He's banging on the door, bang, 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 hollering and screaming and walking around in a circle. I mean, he had a fit.
Yeah.
And then after he got through having his fit, he sat his ass down. And we got on the next flight. He just had a headache.